Do you sometimes find it hard to see things from other people's perspective, where you're focused on what it is that you're going through in that moment, and therefore you misunderstand what could be going on for that other person? That happens a lot because we're wired to be self-centered. And just like we talked about last week, how we navigate emotions is not always the same with other people. Well, stick with me, because in this week's episode, I want to introduce you to a power that's going to help to move those misunderstandings out of the way. Hi, this is Grant Herbert, VUCA Leadership and Sustainable Performance Coach. And today I want to continue our conversation about being more socially aware by unpacking with you the transformational power of empathy. As I'm filming this, it's the 31st of July here in Australia, and I've just finished the month of K's for Are You OK? And in the last couple of weeks, I stepped out of the normal conversation to help to raise awareness around suicide and to help to prevent that. It's funny though, as I've been going through that the topics that I'm talking about in the regular conversation really match up. So last week we talked about being more socially aware, by being aware of what could be going on in those people around us, and to have a more wide-angled view rather than just focusing on where it is that we're going. To do this helps us to have greater conversations, more mutually beneficial relationships, reduces misunderstanding, and therefore eliminates a lot of the conflict that takes up bandwidth and energy in our day. So what I want to do now is continue that conversation by talking about how we can seek to understand other people in a different way. Are you okay is a great thing to ask people. However, if we ask that question, but then we listen to their answer through our own lens of understanding and what it is that we're going through in that particular period in our life, we might actually miss what it is that's going on. Then, as we ask those questions that I talked about a couple of weeks ago, we'll be asking them out of context, and the encouragement that we might give may be confusing for the other person. So, communication with other human beings is going to continue. It doesn't matter about AI, Chat GPT, or any of these things. We're still going to need to have that. So, this special ingredient that comes to those who are very socially aware puts you on the front foot and allows you to be able to communicate without that conflict. So to understand this power, we need to have a look at what it is, and we need to have a look at what it isn't, because even that, having a misunderstanding at that level, creates a difficulty in being able to capitalize on this amazing skill. So the power that we're talking about is the power of empathy. And unfortunately, as I said, it gets mixed up with other particular terms and therefore misinterpreted in its use. So let's have a look at what it's not. So firstly, it's not apathy. So apathy at one end of the spectrum says, I don't really care. I'm not invested in it in any way, shape or form. It doesn't take up any bandwidth in my brain. I'm not concerned about anything that's going on there. Now, obviously, apathy is not something that's going to help you to have great conversations and relationships with other people. It's a state where you just aren't going to be able to get any information because it's just going to go to the keeper because you're not interested. So that's that end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is sympathy. And sympathy says, oh, I see what you're going through there. I'm listening to you and I feel sorry for you. And unfortunately, feeling sorry for someone can have a negative effect in what we do to support them. In fact, it can also help them to feel less than because you're feeling sorry for them. And feeling sorry for someone is not enough. So what we need to do is come into the middle of that, and not at the point where we don't care, not at the point where we feel sorry, but the point of empathy. And empathy says, I want to understand how you might be feeling right now. Empathy doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to do anything about what you hear, but what it says to the other person, firstly, is I care about you. I'm interested in listening to you. I want to walk a mile in your shoes and try to the best of my ability to understand what you're going through. Then, and only then, can you understand and therefore interact with that person in a way that's going to support them. If we're just thinking about what's going on for us and not them, we're going to read it the way we would read it. So as we've talked about in the weeks previous, what empathy allows us to do then is to seek understanding. And to do that, we need to ask questions. We need to listen without judgment and without making our mind up what we think that means. We need to use reflective listening in our conversation that says, so what I'm hearing here is this, is that right? Until we get to the point where there's a mutual understanding of how the other person is feeling. Once we have reached that point, we're able to go to those next steps of offering encouragement and encouraging them to do some action that's going to support that. It's also a point where we're able to, because we understand how they're feeling in that moment and why, we're able to be there as a support and a guide along their journey moving forward. So empathy is not I don't care, and it's not I feel sorry for you. It's I want to understand. In a lot of conversations that you see, particularly on social media, nobody seems to want to understand what the other people are going through. They just see it through the way they understand it. And that's why the comments go backwards and forwards, and people are actually feeling worse about the interaction because it's being read through the eyes of the receiver in the way that they interpret it. But let's be more empathetic. Let's seek to understand and walk a mile in the shoes of the other person and get them to help us understand. To do that, as I said, it starts with being focused on someone else. It's not about forgetting self at all and at all costs. It's just all about the other person. It's no, this is an equal conversation here. I have an opinion, you have an opinion, they might differ, but it doesn't make either of us wrong, because our opinion is based on our experience. It's based on what it is that we are going through in that moment. Being able to be a person that develops more empathy is going to allow you to have much more enjoyable conversations and relationships with people every single day. It's going to reduce the stress and conflict that comes out of these misunderstandings. And it's going to allow people to work together more harmoniously, which means they're going to get more done. And those results that you're after are going to come a lot sooner. So embrace this transformational power of empathy. If it's a skill that you lack, then step one is to develop it. And to start that, just listen more without judgment and hear what's being said and what's not being said. Question in a reflective way to check in and make sure that you're understanding what might be going on. Well, that's it from me for another week. Join me again next week as we continue this conversation around social intelligence by looking at situational awareness and having a bigger picture so that we can understand more as we're going forward. I'll see you then.